Joining me now with more on this is Dr. James Lindsay, founder of New Discourses. Thanks so much for being with us today. It's great to have you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, do you find it at all shocking that universities are restricting school programs based solely on race? I mean, wouldn't a sane, rational human agree this policy goes completely against the principle of equal opportunity for all students?
Yes, and I mean, this is the key point, actually. It does go against the principle, but what we are actually dealing with is a regime in which we are actually facing, because of bad judicial decisions from the Supreme Court over the past 50 years or so, interpretations on the Civil Rights Acts that create two rival paradigms in which we are to understand civil rights. Protected classes, as in the class in a generic sense, race as a class of a way to classify people, sex as a way to classify people, or that certain members in certain groups within those kind of categories are protected. So black people are protected, but white people are not under race, for example. These are two rival interpretations. And so far, because of Supreme Court cases, in this case with the universities, like Bakke versus the Board of Regents of the University of California system in the late 1970s, and because of Grotto versus Bollinger in 2003, reaffirming that and taking it further at University of Michigan in 2003, we have these two rival interpretations of civil rights legislation. Now, the 14th Amendment contains an equal protection clause, not an equitable protection clause. So I think that what you have said so far is correct, and I think that this is what sane and rational people will follow. But the Supreme Court case that's pending over Harvard and another over UNC right now will help us determine whether or not that bad jurisprudence is going to free us up from the bad interpretation of that law.
Wow, incredible. I would just think the focus here should just be based solely on merit and qualifications as opposed to race, but very interesting information there. Now, the irony intensifies as the leader of the NAACP, Reuben Roberts, announces during a press conference that Florida is now unsafe for Black Americans. Now, mind you, Reuben Roberts is a Black man who actually lives in Florida. Dr. Lindsay, if Florida were so unsafe for Black folks, why would the man making this egregious claim choose to live there? I mean, are there any statistics or evidence to actually support his argument, or would you say this is an attempt to influence public opinion to advance a certain political agenda?
All this is narrative warfare. What we operate with the left in the past couple of decades is what's called narrative-driven political warfare. They are doing this very intentionally. They throw out narratives. They are not true. They are not connected to reality. But the goal is to create conditions where they become true enough to be able to motivate voters and policymakers to do what they want. In other words, what they're trying to do with this, in this case, is to try to get people on the left to believe that Florida is fundamentally a racist place and unsafe, and that something has to be done about this, and so that they'll vote for politicians who are going to correct this, and even though it's not true, and they'll look for anything they can to kind of make it look true, and they're trying to bait people on the right to respond by saying, we don't want people who don't share our values in our communities anyway. And so that way they can create a narrative of division and then use that to drive actual division that falls out of that narrative. And then they use, when the actual division arises, they use that as proof that they were right all along and therefore deserve to be in power and get to control the situation even further. And it has worked on Americans for 30 years very consistently, again and again and again. And it's time for us to start stepping back and saying what this is what we kind of colloquially call a psychological operation. And the goal is to manipulate voters into upholding certain beliefs and even maybe making those things come true to a certain degree, and then to use those against us so that they can take away more of our liberties and more of our freedoms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you stated that perfectly, and that's exactly what is indeed going on here. Now, another outrageous issue currently plaguing our nation is that of political correctness. The U.S. State Department is now offering counseling to employees who recently got upset by an internal email regarding gender pronouns. Apparently, there was a system-wide email glitch that temporarily assigned random and incorrect gender pronouns to certain staff members. So now anyone who is triggered by the mishap gets free therapy.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.